Obviously, as the investigation unfolded, did you have people take pictures of the location?
Our crime scene came out and photographed and processed the scene.
All right, and in this photograph here, as part of the presentation, are these essentially how the cars were there when you arrived on scene?
When I arrived on scene, that's how they were, yes.
And would this essentially be called the final resting of the vehicles?
Correct. That's what we call final rest, yes.
Okay, and obviously on the left, we see that was the Ford Mustang driven by Cameron Herron, correct?
Correct.
And on the right was that, what was described as the gold Nissan Altima?
Correct.
And then the next photo here is this just showing a different angle looking north up Bayshore where you can see the stroller off in the distance ahead of the Mustang?
Correct.
Now this next photograph here, that would be, for the record, just a photograph up close of the Mustang where there's damage on the driver's side portion of that vehicle. Did you, in your investigation, determine, in fact, what you believe to be what had caused that damage there at that location?
Would be the impact with the victims.
Okay, and was it also impact with the stroller that was carrying Lilia, the
Correct.
child?
Correct.
And then the next slide, did you further just document a close-up just showing the damage, showing the strike? Was that picture consistent with the strike with both victims being there on the left driver's side of the vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. And then in the next picture, did you document that there was some damage to the vehicle there in the passenger bottom portion of the window, indicating where the victim had struck the windshield?
Correct.
And then in the last photograph here, is that a photograph of the stroller, just documenting the damage?
Yes, that was the stroller would have been when we arrived.
And was that damage, did you at some point verify that that damage was consistent with that damage there on the driver's side front portion of that Ford Mustang? You
can line the stroller up with the Mustang, and you can see how it fits in there perfectly.
In this next slide, at some point, did you observe video surveillance that was retrieved that was taken right near where the crash had occurred?
Yes, I did.
All right, and then did someone from Tampa Police Department eventually try to enhance or zoom in on that portion that we're seeing there in between the trees?
I did. One of our forensic techs.
All right, and if you can just describe to us, before I play it, essentially kind of what we're going to be looking for here before I play this video.
And that would be looking kind of southeast on Bayshore. So northbound lanes are going to be, where your green boxes, you're going to see, that's after the crash. Come through that green box area there, and the two cars on.
All right, so what we're seeing there as far as like the reference point of that gazebo, just beyond that gazebo across the street through those trees, is that essentially where the impact had occurred?
Yes.
And the bottom portion of that video that's enhanced showing in between those two trees, is that where we'll see the two vehicles come through and pass through prior to the collision?
Yes.
I'll go ahead and play this at this time. Now, what we just saw it there, I'll play it again, but I just paused it there. Is that first vehicle that we see in that bottom enhanced portion, is that the Ford Mustang just prior to the collision?
It is.
And then, I couldn't stop it, but let me play it again. But the vehicle that we see right behind him, is that the Nissan Altima?
It is.
And did you determine during your investigation that those vehicles, based on this video and based on the witness statements, appeared to be very close to each other prior to the impact?
They were.
Okay. But was the Ford Mustang the vehicle ahead of the Nissan Altima?
The Mustang was in front, yes.
And in this case, there wasn't any evidence, and nor does the court believe that there was any specific intent to do harm, in this case, to the victims. But there was intent to drive at an egregious speed, 102 miles an hour, regardless of the consequences and regardless of who that ended up harming. And then the second part of that, the second component, is the harm caused. And in this case, it's just impossible to have greater harm than the harm that occurred in this case, which was the loss of a mother, loss of a baby, and really the loss of a family as it existed when this occurred. And the court doesn't find that either the minimum or the maximum is appropriate in this case. I've said it several times, the serious nature of the offense, egregious nature of the conduct, and mostly the harm that's been caused prevent me from putting this as a bottom of the guidelines minimum case. But the departure bases argued by the defendant did provide some reason not to put it at the top of the maximum. And specifically, the court did take into account that the defendant's 18, certainly responsible for his actions, and he's being held accountable for his actions. But the age of 18, the court finds, is a mitigating factor and shouldn't put this at a maximum. Also, the complete lack of prior criminal history is something that the court considered as preventing this from being at the top. So having said all that, the court is going really toward the middle between the minimum under the guidelines and the maximum punishment permitted under Florida state law. So on count one, vehicular homicide, the court's going to adjudicate the defendant guilty, sentence him to 9 years in Florida state prison. On count two, same charge, court will adjudicate the defendant guilty, sentence him to 15 years Florida state prison, and that'll run consecutive to count one, for a total of 24 years Florida state prison. Count three is a misdemeanor, unlawful racing on a highway, so the court will adjudicate the defendant guilty, sentence him to time served. Give credit for time served, I believe, 2 days. Court will impose mandatory court costs. Mr. Herron, you have given up the right to appeal the determination of your guilt or innocence. You do have 30 days to appeal the sentence of the court. And I'll direct the bailiffs to take Mr. Herron into custody.